have Scott Martin. Very pleased to have Scott join us here today. Like I said, known Scott for a number of years, and he's got a very long history. I guess that means you're not as young as you once used to be, right, Scott?
Right.
43 years experience in the poultry industry, currently lives in Georgia. He's had a career with Simmons Foods for work 16 years as hatchery manager, hatchery director of hatchery operations, broiler manager, breeder, production. Did a lot of different things with Simmons, and then joined Cobb-Vantress and worked there for 21 years as a hatchery specialist in their World Tech Support group. And that's kind of where I ran into Scott, and we interacted quite a bit in that role. And in 2016, he started doing some private consulting domestically and internationally, and continues to do that today. And so he brings a very in-depth bit of experience and knowledge on hatcheries. So today he's going to be talking to us about hatcheries, where we've been, where we're at now, and possibly where we're going in the future, and then just kind of give us his perspective on a lot of things incubation wise to help us have better performance. So with that, I will turn over to Scott Martin that you see there and have him share his screen. And then we will let him go ahead and get started. And when he concludes, I will be back on here and we'll address the questions you have. So Scott.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. And we'll get going here. Keith, can you see the screen okay?
Yes. Yep, we're good.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank everyone for attending and listening here. I don't know the attendees. I'm sure I know a lot of you. I've been to probably most of your hatcheries, and it's good to be able to share some information with you again. And I especially want to thank Keith Bramwell for the invite to talk on behalf of Jamesway Chickmaster. And it is certainly my privilege to be able to do this. I have enjoyed being in the poultry industry and continue to enjoy it. But again, just to reiterate Keith's talk, or what Keith wanted me to talk about, was again about our hatcheries now and what is going to happen in the future. What am I seeing? What do I hear? And I visit with a lot of people. Okay, I have, and one thing, I learn a lot. I learn everywhere I go, and I continue to learn and never stop. And I get the privilege of doing that, and then I get the privilege of sharing success with others, just as yourself. And so it is certainly my pleasure, excuse me. But when we talk about our hatcheries now and in the future, I wanted to first talk about the past, okay? Now, due to the length of this presentation, we can't go into depth on everything. So I'll be, going on and on and on. But the first thing we're going to talk about is the past, okay? So that we can see how has things evolved over the years. So first of all, in the past, most hatcheries, if they were built to be a hatchery, they were a T-shaped hatchery, similar to the one you see on the screen, okay? Now, the egg receiving was in the middle, and you usually had a wing only on one side, maybe, or if you did have two wings, there was one on each side of the egg room, okay? Not a bad layout, not bad for multi-stage, but it was, we learned a lot over the years. I hope we have. I hope we all have. So, but this is pretty typical, a T-shaped hatchery, okay? Now, again, I can't touch base on everything, but there were hatcheries that were incubators put inside of existing buildings, and we called it a hatchery, okay? So it's all out there. Everything is out there. But this is typically, if one was built, and I'm using 1977, because that's when I got in the industry, okay? So I thought I'd go back to that, because I could at least talk about that. So let's look at a day in the hatchery, okay? First of all, we processed Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, okay? A long day was 116,000 eggs plus set, but we also culled eggs before we put them in the incubators. We looked at them completely, okay? Every egg was handled in 1977. We'd hatch about 90,000 to 100,000 chicks, but we also culled chicks very heavily before they went to the customer, okay? In this case, it was a broiler hatchery and went to broiler farms. It took about 10 hours if everything went well. It took 10 hours, okay? We started about 7, would finish whenever you were finished, okay? There was no set time. You worked until everything was finished. And the chicks would arrive on the farms about 11 a.m., okay? That would be about the first load that would make it to a farm, still delivering till late in the night, okay? And most of the time we held chicks over to the next day because we couldn't get them out. We simply couldn't get them out. And so anyway, so not too good. You know, that wasn't a very good process. At the time, we thought it was great because I didn't know any different. This is exactly how I thought the world of hatcheries was operating, okay? Now, and then on Wednesday, the non-hatch day, the crew, we would all go out into the field to the farms and we'd vaccinate the pullets, okay, before they got into our breeder farms. And that was our week. That's what we did in the hatchery. All right. In the chick process, at that time, we debeaked all broiler chicks. Now, I know the new terminology now is beak treatment, okay? But we called it debeak then, all right? And that's what we did to every single broiler that went out. We vaccinated orally with Newcastle bronchitis, okay? And how we did this, there were different ways. You could do it with a bottle, with an eyedropper, or what we used was a machine called a Beacovac that, it was very sophisticated. You opened the bird's mouth 2 at a time, and you put it over this little swing bar that had tiny holes in it. And when it clicked and you were burning the beak off, vaccine administered down the throat of the baby chick. At that time, that was the best thing that's ever happened. What a great way to vaccinate a chick. Handle it one time, you get to debeak and vaccinate for Newcastle bronchitis. Then they went to another, what's called a chick go round. They went into another circle ring that took, and then we would vaccinate, we would sub-Q. All of our vaccinators were hand vaccinators. We'd vaccinate with HVT, and we used 100% on all birds antibiotics, okay? In those days, we used gentamicin. All right. So this all happened during the process, okay? And our sub-Q vaccinators were electric. They were not pneumatic. They were electric, okay? Then after everything was done, because none of these counters ever worked, they never worked well at all, so we'd have to recount the chicks by hand. So we made sure we got exactly 100 in a box. And then and only then could we actually count our hatch to see what our percent was. Then we would set it up for delivery. And it took a long time to do all this. Now, what kind of breed were we using at that time? 100% classic breed. What I'm talking about is, and you can't talk about breeds without using names here, but at that time we were 100% arbor breed, what I call a classic breed. Small bird only, okay? And our bird size was about 3.4 pounds or less, okay? You know, whenever they hit that day, they went to the plant. Now, that's just the way that it was. Our hatch typically went 80 to 86% in the same week, same flocks, okay? Thursday and Friday was always a better hatch than Monday and Tuesday. And I always wondered that. I'm new into the industry in 1977, but I thought it doesn't make sense how we get eggs out of the same flock, how they can hatch so different, okay? Our 7-day mortality was good. 0.5, 0.9 would be a high. I honestly, I can't remember it going over 1%. I really can't remember that. And their 7-day mortality wasn't an issue. When those chicks left the hatchery, we never heard about them again. They were gone. I didn't know anything about performance, broiler performance. All I knew is we produced a baby chick. And the next time I saw that chick was when it was meat into the grocery store, you know, that we bought. Now, on a delivery, we would get about 75% of the amount of chicks that we hatched out that same day. But we'd only hold maybe 25%, sometimes less, sometimes more, over to the next day. It was never ended, okay? Therefore, we processed Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, which means we also delivered chicks on Wednesday and on Saturday, okay? It was just seemed to never finish. It never finished. I know right now we say, you know, it never ends in a hatchery. It's 24/7, and this is true. This is true. But our processes have changed. Our sanitation, what little we could do was done at night, okay? And hopefully it was finished by the next morning when we started up processing again. And then obviously we had to do it on our weekends. Transfer. We transferred the same time every single day. Nothing changed. There was nothing to talk about. Here's when you transfer. We transferred on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Tuesday, Wednesday was Thursday and Friday's hatch. Friday and Saturday was Monday and Tuesday's hatch. Remember the slide before, we always had a better hatch, okay? We always did. So at that time, I didn't know any different. I thought that's the way it is. Again, we learned a lot. Those of you listening to this right now, you know what I'm talking about. Those of you that I have conversed with, you know that we talk about this a lot, the differences in hatch. Okay, ventilation. We had evaporative cooling or exhaust fans, sometimes both, but we had no pressure control. I had no idea what our static pressure was. All I knew is you get an egg in, you put it in the incubator, and you transfer it to the hatcher, and we hope we have baby chicks. That's what I knew, okay? We had recirculating heaters in the wintertime, but they were always negative. Our rooms were always negative. We, you know, and during when the evaporative cooling was on, sometimes the doors would move because they would blow so much air in there. In the wintertime, it would go the opposite way. I didn't know anything about oxygen requirements for embryos. I didn't know anything then, okay? And I'm still learning about this. But what did we have? We had husbandry. Whatever we knew not to put a dirty egg in the incubator. We handled every egg. We had labor. We didn't have a labor problem. Now, I'm not saying we had extra people. I want to clarify what I mean by we had labor. In those days, I could see somebody walking down the road and step out of my office and say, hey, you got a job? No. Do you need a job? Come to work right now. And we'd fill the application out later. Okay, those of you my age, you know, you can relate to what I'm talking about. We had no problem getting people. What we had a problem with was retaining people, okay? We were in a constant trial of trying to train somebody. It was just constant, okay? And every now and then you'd get somebody that would hang in there with you for a while and stay in there. They liked the business. Again, all we knew is get those eggs in. Hopefully we get chicks out. What we didn't have then, as I'm pointing out, we didn't have the knowledge that we have today. Okay? We didn't have the knowledge of what's supposed to go on, no knowledge of incubation, okay? And we had no programs. We didn't have a program. We didn't do embryo diagnosis, didn't do chick quality checks, didn't do anything like that. We just set the eggs, whatever. The one thing I can remember we did, though, every day was transfer, consistent. We had no automation, none. I didn't even know what automation was. I could not even imagine automation being into the hatchery, right? So what did we learn? From that point, you know, I had to learn something, and absolutely, I am so thankful that I had a guy join the company I work with. He became my boss, and he was a 20-year veteran, and he understood incubation, and he was a great engineering mind, and he understood different things, and I learned so much from him, and I owe him so much. But so what did we learn? We learned that things, they have changed and they are going to continue to change. That'll never go away. It's the only thing certain is change. Okay. So, but what did we learn that we could get our, hands on? We learned economics. It wasn't about putting an egg in and getting the chick out. It was about understanding incubation and to get a healthy chick to come out, to get a good quality egg into the hatchery. And we learned, how does that affect our bottom line in the company? Okay. We learned that it's all about performance. It took me a long time to realize that we're not in the egg business, and I wasn't in the baby chick business. I was in the meat business. Okay. Just the hatchery was a small part, but we had to do our part. Logistics. Realize a lot about logistics. We just can't set eggs anytime we want. We can't transfer anytime we want. We can't hatch anytime we want. We got to get things together. And sometimes logistics gets in our way and we don't see it coming. It's kind of like it hits us blindly. An example I'm going to give, we build hatcheries larger, and we get it to where we can process all of these chicks in just a few hours, and they end up setting in a hatchery getting hot because we don't have the transportation to get them to the farms. We have transportation, but not enough to get them out of the hatchery immediately. And I want to talk about that a little bit further, because that has been come to the front burner, and that's been a big, big issue on affecting uniformity and chick quality. Labor. What have we learned? Labor is now hard to get, period. There are hatcheries. I've been told this, and I believe it. There are hatcheries right now that can't even get anybody to come apply for a position. So if they lose someone, they're going to be without that person. There's nobody to replace. And it's big. And it's not just the hatchery, it's in the whole production side, and even in the processing side, even more so. Labor is hard to get. We learned how egg quality is very important to produce good chick quality. We learned that good chick quality promotes good livability. Data collection. What have we learned? Not to collect data just to be collecting it, but collect the proper data and manage off of it. Use it as a management tool. We have learned the importance of preventive maintenance, not reactive maintenance, which means when something broke, go fix it. We do that, but we learn the value of preventive maintenance, okay? Ventilation. We have learned so much about ventilation. There's a lot of ventilation experts out there, okay? And I've certainly learned a lot about hatchery ventilation over the years, but it is amazing, and it's a necessity to produce a good quality chick that we want. We have to have it all, okay? And then there's genetics. Our genetics change constantly, okay? And this next slide, I put on here that genetics, they're full of potential, okay? They're full of potential, but they change. Genetics change every year. And just to put it in perspective, what we have now, what we're dealing with now, was developed about 5 years ago, okay? We're about 5 years behind the time, and genetics are always on an incline, okay? And we're trying to reach the potential. And we're down here, and we try to reach that. But by the time we reach it, the genetics moves, and we finally hit the bottom of it. But we're now 5 years behind, and we're always going to be chasing genetics. And I've talked to several geneticists, okay? And I've talked to them about this. And they say they're not going to quit. They say our customers ask for more eggs. They want better feed conversion. They want higher yield. We want higher hatchability. We want it all. And through the selection process, they're able to give that to us. But it's up to us. It's up to us. The very people that ask for this, it's up to us to achieve this potential. It's there. It's there. We just need to be able to reach it. And it's the same way with our incubators, okay? Our incubators can handle anything we put in it. And sometimes we think, well, yeah, if we only hatched 87%, 88%, we wouldn't have much trouble. Hey, these incubators can handle whatever that we need to do. They will produce a good quality chick, and they will produce several of them, okay? It's up to us to make sure we get and achieve the potential of that incubator. It's the same way with genetics, okay? It's always going to change. Now, here's just a slide to kind of show you how it's changed. And this just goes back to 1987, okay? But if you look, this is 35 years ago, something like this, right? 34 years ago. Look what the industry has gained. Now, this is gained from good management, good feed, okay? Good feed formulations and genetics. We're able to gain, in this particular graph, it shows 43 points, okay? Now, that's a lot of feed conversion, 43 points. I remember the days when we beat two points. I remember when we went under 2. We thought we were somebody when that happened, okay? I didn't know things would get better, that we could get to a 150. Had no idea. But later on, I learned that in a million bird operation, and if you hear me talk about an operation being a million bird, I'm talking about per week. That's what they produce per week, is a million. But a million bird operation, a hatchery can affect feed conversion. Remember, the genetics are there to get it. We just need to do what we can to achieve it. But a couple of points, feed conversion is worth about $1 million a year to a million bird operation. But just a couple of points, okay? So let's remember that as we go through. This is where the economics come in, okay? What are we leaving on the table? What are we leaving? So what's happening now? What's going on in our hatcheries right now in 2021? There's that same hatchery. It's still there. And there are several that are still there. I think like the average hatchery in the industry, in the world, is between 30 and 35 years old. But there's that same T-style shaped hatchery with the same incubators in it, probably, okay? It's still there. They're not going away. And I tell everybody, when you build a hatchery, you're going to build it for life. So be sure we spend the time and effort on the design and what we need to know to carry us that next 35 years or 50 years. I know some of you are saying, well, heck, we've got incubators 60 years old, and they're out there. Remember, I said the average age is 30, 35 years old. So now we have hatcheries like this, okay? Oh my goodness. This is all in, all out. And I want you to look at this, and if you can follow my pointer, but the eggs come in here. They come in the end. We can receive them. We have fumigation capability. We have automation to put them in the racks for us. And they come in, they come all the way in. We go into this gray area right here where we're going to transfer. We're not transferring in rooms anymore. Not in a new hatchery, we're not. We have a transfer room, okay? Then it goes into the hatchery, and then it goes into a separator, the chick takeoff, and everything's automated. And here's all your baskets and your trays. They come back through and they get cleaned and they go back in for storage. It's all automatic. Then it gets more automatic in the chick room. We have counters, okay? I mean, we have everything that we need. We have learned so much, but this is not only egg to chick friendly, it's user friendly. Look at this corridor where people come to work. There's a corridor for personnel only. You can go into the egg room without walking through the chick room. Because if we walk through the chick room first to go to the egg room, we just committed a biosecurity error. Now, we have no choice to do it because that's the way the hatchery was laid out, right? So, but look at this hatchery. So if we're going to build, and if we're going to look at something like this, rely on your incubator company to help you out with this. Rely on the experts, the ventilation companies to help you out with this, okay? Because they can give you a hatchery that is very user-friendly because labor is not getting better at all. So what do we do now? We have a lot of mixed breeds out there. We have birds that high yield. We have deboning. We raise a big bird, okay? Raise a very big bird for deboning. And we want not just breast yield, we want carcass yield, right? And then we have the good feed converters out there, you know, that really give us a good pound of meat for a low amount of feed. And it's getting better and better and better. And we still have the classic. Little small bird, put it out there, the thing grows up and it's a small bird, it comes in and it works well. And they're still out there, okay? They haven't gone away completely. Our hatch is still 80 to 86%. Okay, it ranges all over the place. Thursday and Friday is still always the best. We'll talk about that a little bit. But our mortality is higher than it used to be. Now it's about 1 to 2%, mostly because we don't have antibiotics in our vaccine anymore. So what have we went to from today to 40 years ago? Okay, what have we done? Well, now a lot of hatcheries, and I know there's exceptions out there, okay? But I'm just telling you for the general part. Our hatcheries are million bird hatcheries, okay? 1 million a week, okay? But we have some hatcheries that are very large. They're over 1 million a day. This is per day. We don't cull any eggs. They come in farm racks now. They be pushed right over. Some incubators, you use the same rack that was on the farm. It goes right into the incubator. There's no husbandry. We don't look at eggs. We hope they're correct. Most of the time they're not. Look at the amount of chicks. We can do over 200,000 chicks now, okay? Where 100,000 used to take 10 hours. Now we can do the 250 in 5 hours or less, thanks to automation. Okay, that's exactly what allowed us to do something like this because we don't have the labor and it's getting worse. Okay, now our chicks, they arrive from 6 a.m. and usually by noon, they're on the farm. Done. Broiler managers love it. They can get the birds, their crops full, most of the crops full before they bed down that night, right? This is what we're after. Now, what about transfer? We transfer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's all over the place. It depends on when we have a crew, okay? Monday and Tuesday are 18 days or more. And on Monday and Tuesday, we usually transfer into wet hatcheries. We shouldn't. They should be dry. And some operations make sure everything's dry before we go in it. But it causes your transfer to be at night, okay? Or we continue with the Tuesday and Wednesday and to do a 19-day transfer for Thursday, Friday hatch, all right? And then on Friday and Saturday, there's still the 18-day. It's still the 18-day, okay? But if we go to Saturday, Sunday, then it's 19. So there's hatcheries out there that transfer Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, and they do a 19-day transfer, and it's very consistent, very consistent. Chick process. We spray with Newcastle bronchitis. We do 100 birds at a time now. And it's on automated belts now. We don't even have to do it by hand anymore. It comes down a belt, stops, sprays, and moves on to be stacked and delivered. We vaccinate in ovo now. We have an ovo technology that came in the early 90s. Okay, that's when everything came in. And the company that came out with the in ovo was Embryo. And thank goodness for them, because if it wasn't for in ovo, we would not be able to automate. There would be no reason for it. Okay, because if we're still hand vaccinating, we're still hand vaccinating. Okay, where you can do maybe 3,000 an hour. Well, if you have 1 million chicks a day, how many hours is it going to take for one person? How many people are you going to need? And that's where it comes into the labor. So that revolutionized the industry right there in the early 90s. And it's got more and more popular. Now there's other players out there with in ovo. And I am a proponent of in ovo. I believe in it. When it first came out in the early 90s, I wasn't. I'm not going to lie. And the people at Embryo can tell you, they heard me say it, that I told them it was a fly-by-night company. They were crazy, and that we would never be able to vaccinate a chick in an egg. That's absolutely asinine to me. How could you do that? Was I ever wrong? And thank goodness I was wrong, okay? So, but now, no antibiotic. It's pulling out everywhere. Not just in the States, all countries, everybody's starting to pull their antibiotics out. Why? Because the consumer doesn't want it. Okay? And we're not going to get into a big story on why and why not and this and that. Okay? I'm just telling you they don't want it, so companies have pulled it out. Chicks are counted automatically now with very good accuracy, might I add, provided we do the maintenance, the preventive maintenance on our equipment. Okay? And they're delivered immediately. Again, as I say, we can deliver that amount of birds to a farm by noon in 5 hours, but it's still not enough. We want more. What about delivery? Everything's the same day now. We don't hold chicks over anymore. I hope you don't hold chicks over. You're losing performance if you do. It's climate controlled. We have good climate controlled transport, and they work wonderful. You can haul chicks for hours. They hold the chicks beautiful, but we have to operate them correctly. This is where the knowledge comes in. We don't use paper anymore. We don't bring the chick box pads back into the hatchery because we don't use them anymore. We have new box now. It's a padless box and they're wonderful, but they're harder to clean. But we know they're harder to clean, so let's spend a little more time on them. It's certainly worth that versus putting chick box pads in, okay? Sanitation is done every day now. If it's done correctly, there's time to do it at the end of the process, at the end of all processes, and to do the sanitation and to get it done and get it done properly, okay? What about ventilation? Now, when we build a hatchery, or if we're renovating a hatchery, we are using HVAC, heat ventilated air conditioned hatcheries, okay? They provide heat, they provide cooling, and they control pressure. They have it all. And that works wonderful. Now, there's different kinds of HVAC. There's different kinds of ventilation in hatcheries. There's single use or single room use. And then there's a continuous flow that goes throughout the whole hatchery and trunked out through the hatchery. And they all work good. They all work good. But they have to be managed differently, okay? But it's available. What do we have now? We have knowledge. Right now, we have everything at our fingertips. If you're a new person coming into the hatchery world, okay, there's education out there everywhere that you can learn about the hatching incubation process, okay? It's out there. Programs. We understand the importance now to have a good program in place, a good egg grading, chick quality reports. Embryo Diagnosis, all of these informational reports to allow us to manage off of, okay? We have automation. We have robots out there that's moving chicks around and doing this and working very well when they're adjusted properly, okay? Everything, no matter what you have, it has to be ran correct, all right? Research. There is research available for everything. Everything from egg quality to chick quality and anything in between the incubation, just about anything you need, okay? Dr. Bramwell, he said him and I go way back, and that's how him and I met, was to do a research, okay? We did it on egg holding, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But you can go online, you can see all kind of articles that he has, okay? You can look in Poultry Science and look at the papers written on just about anything you need. So, and it's at our fingertips because we have the internet, okay? We have the internet now. We can look up anything that we want, all right? Computers. If we didn't have computers, if we didn't have Wi-Fi, right now we wouldn't be having this webinar because I'm able to sit at home due to our COVID restrictions as we're all affected with, okay? And I hope everybody's doing well with that, by the way. But we're at home and I'm able to talk all over the world and we're able to view this, okay? So it's at our fingertips. We have cell phones, okay, which they're attached to us and we can't get away. We just had a conversation about this earlier. It's stuff. We can be reached 24 hours a day, okay? Our emails we can look at 24 hours a day. Now, I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just telling you it's available, okay? Meetings. We have more meetings than you can imagine. We have meetings to talk about meetings, okay? There's just an overload of them, in my opinion, and so many unnecessary. I think certain ones are necessary, but not all of them. That we're losing our husbandry, okay? Now, what do we have right now? We have outdated equipment. Again, Keith asked me, I want you to tell us what you see out there. And I see a lot of outdated equipment. And what do I mean by equipment? I'm talking about incubation, number one. I'm talking about automation. The lack of, and what we do have is not being ran correct, okay? Our ventilation systems. We might even have HVAC, but they're falling apart. A hatchery runs 24/7. We abuse all of our equipment by cleaning, maintenance. They're used every single day. And things are going to break on it. Things are going to wear out. We have to be able to put the money in to either repair or replace. And there are times that we need to replace. And it's very outdated. What don't we have? We don't have the labor anymore, not even present at all. We don't have new equipment, okay? And we don't have the time to operate like we should. And what I mean by that is we cannot process chicks. We cannot transfer eggs. We cannot set eggs properly and complete our processes and get our sanitation done properly. We do not have the time because we don't have the labor. Very few hatcheries have labor, what they need, and you can tell it when you walk in. You can tell by the view, and you can tell by the smell. They have what they need. But most hatcheries don't have this. Labor has been cut, and even if it's been cut, we still don't have enough to fill the capacity that we need. And it's not only a problem now, it's becoming a big problem. Okay. Sometimes, and a lot of you have attended these, have attended schools of mine I call hatchery roundtables, where we just discuss, just Q&A. Labor is always at the top. What are you doing about labor? How are you getting your chicks processed? How are you getting your eggs set? How many drivers do you have? what are we doing? But remember, we have the knowledge now. We have the knowledge about our economics, about how a hatchery can affect broiler performance. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 points. Okay. I don't know, but we have this knowledge. And I'm going to give you an example. I visited a company not that many years ago, and we ended up in a meeting, and they had 15 different hatcheries. When I looked at the feed conversion, when I looked at the broiler results from the top complex to the worst complex, the one on bottom, there was 15 points, 0.15, 15 points of feed conversion difference. And what really got my attention was that they're all fed out of the same feed mill. So we can't blame feed for that at all. And I don't like blaming nutrition at all, because it's rare that we do have a nutrition issue. Okay. We have a lot to do in our own facilities. Now, moving on here. Here is what we have right now and we need to be using. Remember our economics. Things are going to get tougher. We cannot just put an egg in an incubator and expect the chick to come out. Not going to happen. These incubators have everything we need to do anything we need, but we have to get it out of it. We've got to supply the proper ventilation around this machine. We've got to run the proper programs. We've got to set the proper profiles, the proper temperature. We've got to manage them different. And again, this is one-on-one. We have multi-stage incubators out there, several of them. Nothing wrong with multi-stage, but I'll tell you what, moving into the future and stuff, single stage, my opinion, and I'm sure several others, is the only way to go. And I'm going to explain it in this slide right here. We put young, old, prime in the same incubator. Okay, they're designed to handle a group. However, how do we handle a young and an old and a prime at the same in one? Okay, that's why we get a benefit of when we do a mix. But we have to put the best mix with what we have in there. Okay, and I'm going to give you an example. If we say we want 45-week average age inside your incubator, okay, then we're going to put 25-week-old and 65-week-old in. We have an average of 45. So no, we don't mean that. What we're talking about is you have flocks, all different ages. Try to get whatever you have, the best average you have, the best mean you can get, and put inside for a set. And we should do it every time, but we overlook it. Okay, we have air-cooled incubators, we have water-cooled incubators, okay? On an air-cooled incubator, you cannot transfer later. You need to transfer earlier than later, because if you have a high hatchability, that incubator cannot get rid of the metabolic heat that's being produced in there, and we can't get rid of it, and it causes overheating. So this is why timing is important. This is why our programs are important. We've got to treat the incubator like it was designed to be, okay? And then we have incubators that are air-cooled, that are more forgiving. They're a lot more forgiving, because now at least we can control the temperature. But that doesn't mean we can just transfer anytime we want. We still need the same program. But I'm just saying there's different kinds, okay? Now, we set temperature and we set humidity, and that's it. We don't change it while we have everything in there, because we have 6 ages in there. In a single stage operation, and again, those of you listening to this, you know I push single stage. If you're going to replace it with single stage, okay? Now, it's designed for one embryonic age from start to finish. You set the profile with what you want. But I also want to say this, we know as the embryo gets older, we have to change temperature or it's going to overheat. So we're able to set a profile. That's what they're for. Jamesway Chickmaster comes in and they give you a profile to start with, and it's a good one, and it works for most. But if your operation changes, okay, and instead of running 98% fertility for an average, whatever reason we're running 88, you're going to have to change your profile. But there's no book to go back and say, so what profile should we run on here? This is where it comes from, the knowledge and your experience. This is where you sit down and you say, okay, what do we want to do? Well, the one thing we need to know is, what embryonic temperature do we want? You're looking from day one till transfer 100.4 to 100.6, somewhere in that range. So that's what we need to do. So we have to change our profiles to achieve that. Okay? So, because we got to understand something. Okay? The incubator is designed to give you what you need, but it's up to us that we get it out of the incubator. The same way with the genetics. Okay? The single stage are so forgiving. It's so flexible. It allows different set times, different transfer times, and this and that, because we can actually profile the machines to hold eggs, to start incubation, or to start pre-warming when we want, start incubation when we want. Okay? So it's already a labor saver. We're just right there. And people used to tell me all the time, they'll say, Scott, you've mentioned several times that we may be hurting our broiler performance 2 to 6 points in feed conversion. How can the hatchery affect that? Our incubators can only do so much, and we can't make it better. Well, take the same flocks, split them, put them in multi-stage, a good multi-stage managed, very good, versus a single stage, and you're going to automatically get about 2 points better feed conversion out of the same flocks. So yes, we can affect that from an incubation standpoint. Now, can we improve the multi-stage to get that? We can, but it takes time and management. And a good understanding of incubation to do something like this, okay? Now, moving on here, sanitation, okay. Again, this is something that we tend to forget. So quickly on sanitation, we're not talking about products, but I'm talking about running a baseline study. What we need to do is we need to find out what challenge do we have in our hatchery? What challenges do we have from a bacterial and a mold standpoint? And we need to run different products against those challenges to find out what's the most effective. So it's just use a reliable product that is going to work for you, okay? Now, I put on here to fog rooms with your products and stuff, and I believe in that still, but to fumigate. I don't like putting wet disinfectant in a machine. Well, if we stop using formaldehyde, we're going to have no choice but to do this unless we can figure something else out. And believe me, there are people working on that, okay? So again, that's the research that I'm talking about. It's available for us. But number one, we have good ventilation. We learn about ventilation. Keep a good airflow through the hatchery. Remember I talked about in the early 90s, the Innovo came in, right? Well, when it did, all of a sudden during our breakouts, Embryo Diagnosis, we started getting like smoke come out. It was mold, aspergillus, okay? And it would come out with, oh my gosh, the machine is causing mold. And no, it wasn't at all. Well, indeed, by poking that hole allows an avenue for the spores to come in, okay? It was actually a tool. It became a tool for us to know, is our airflow proper? Are we cross-contaminating our transfer process? Okay? It's actually a tool. It actually is a good thing to be able to see that because you couldn't see it before. Now, dirty eggs. Oldest trick in the book, but it works. Always transfer your oldest flocks last. They tend to have more bacteria. You have larger eggs, shell density changes, porosity changes, and you have more bacteria in older eggs. Everybody does. Therefore, be on the safe side. Transfer your young to old, always. Even if you put a mix of egg ages inside your incubators in a multi-stage. When you transfer, put them back in order so that you can transfer the young to the oldest, okay? Prevent egg sweating. We can't really prevent egg sweating. When we go from from a cold to a warm environment, we're going to have condensation. It's going to happen, but we have to manage it. So we can prevent it by not causing the problem in the first place. But if we do have it, then we do need to manage it. Okay. And you manage it by circulating fans. That's all. It's that simple. Okay. But we can do this, and it causes us not to have contaminated eggs. Egg temperatures. We learned a lot about egg holding temperature. And as a matter of fact, Dr. Bramwell, the first thing him and I worked on was this exact thing. What was the best temperature to hold an egg at? Like most research, you don't find out what you want to know, but you find out a lot more than what you thought you would, okay? And basically, one thing that Keith found out in doing all this, and believe me, I have used this everywhere, and it is true, true, true. It's more important to not fluctuate your temperature. Keep your egg temperature constant. As the egg temperature drops down to your holding temperature in your hatchery, keep it there, hold it, and then let it come up towards incubation, okay? Perfect V here. All right. It's more important not to fluctuate. It's not necessarily what egg room temperature do you want to run. Do you want to run, and I'm using Fahrenheit, excuse me. Do you want to run 65 degrees, 66, 68, 70? Whatever you want to run. Some people run even warmer than that if they don't have old egg storage time, okay? It all changes, but don't fluctuate. Pay attention, and believe me, it makes a big difference, okay? Preventive maintenance. We need our incubation, not just incubation calibrated, but all of our room controls. And when we have open doors, we have gaskets missing, when we have fans not turning properly and things like that right there, that takes everything out of calibration. We seem to think that our calibration is only what our display readout is versus the actual. That's only one part of it. We have to keep these machines running like they did when they were new every day. We need to keep monitoring this so that when something comes out, we know there's a problem. We need to start checking embryo temperatures at transfer, check moisture loss, check our pipping. We check embryo temperatures. Let that embryo tell you how well of an incubation job we did. Let the moisture loss tell us how good a job we did in our incubation. Let the pipping tell us how good we did in our incubation. We're going to let the embryos and chicks tell us what to do. We need to rely on this data. Check chick temperatures. Don't get your chicks hot, but confirm what you think you have is what you have. Remember, I talked about preventive versus reactive, and it's very simple. Always be willing to invest in preventive maintenance. Preventive maintenance means changing something maybe that's working. Don't let it break down, because when it breaks down, you're going to have the cost of the maintenance and the cost of the failure. And the cost of the failure is very expensive. And I'm just going to give you just to put it in perspective. If we have a turning issue in a machine, something happened and something broke, we didn't do our preventive maintenance and it broke. We can go in and fix that. And it's new again, everything's working again. But you affected everything inside that machine. And you cannot get it back. You can't get it back. I cannot emphasize preventive maintenance enough. And as these hatcheries get larger, preventive maintenance is the key to success, in my opinion. Tools. I don't know how many hatcheries I've been inside and they don't have tools. This is not a lot of tools. It's just a small set, but it'll do anything you want. And I'll go over it real quick. Here's a Magna Helix gauge. Measures pressure in your rooms. Doesn't control, just measure. As you walk by, you can see it. Here's another right underneath. This is just a portable. It does the exact same thing, but you can take it with you and go from room to room, room to outside. You can measure all this. Rectal thermometer for measuring baby chick temp. And that's all I measure with it, is with the rectal, is a baby chick. Digital thermometer, a digital hygrometer measuring humidity, data loggers, smoke emitters we can light so we can actually see our airflow, which way it's running. You know, we think our ventilation's right, set some smoke off and look at it. You can actually see it with your own eyes. A stroboscope to measure RPMs on fans. These fans work great, but they're controlled by motors, all of them. And motor bearings start to seize up, and when they do, the fan may appear to work correctly, but if you do an RPM, you'll see that it's low, and now you don't have the air movement. It's all part of calibration. And then an infrared thermometer. And I like this one. I use this on eggs. I use it in the egg room on eggs, and I use it to take embryo temperatures before transfer. Okay? Just a small set of tools. Skip sets. I am telling you, this is the most forgotten thing that I think I've seen. This is for multi-stage incubation. Okay, not single, multi-stage. We have to manage temperature if we skip a set. In other words, if our incubator is not full, okay? And it's really, really easy to do, okay? And it's a 14-day rule. And it is this: if your oldest embryo inside of that incubator is 14 days or less, we have to increase temperature. If you don't, you're going to lose hatch and you're going to affect your chick quality in a negative manner. Okay? So again, if the embryo is 14 days or less, we have to increase the temperature. Okay? Then, once we put an empty set in behind it, the next time we set, we need to add a little extra incubation time. So if you're setting at 7 in the morning, we may need to set the next 2 sets at 5, okay, to give a little more chamber time for the next ones coming up. And I'm going to give a demonstration here in a little bit. And used to skip sets, typically everybody, they would associate it with just Jamesway only. I find it with every incubator. You can't run an incubator like this. You can't do it and expect good results if you don't change the profile or the temperature. You cannot, it will not work, and it never has and it never will. This incubator will do exactly what it's supposed to as long as we operate it properly, okay? Now, moving on here. Here is the skip set example in a Jamesway, okay? Now, when it shows the 6 rows and at the bottom it shows the age of the embryos, okay? Now, as the box comes in, this is going to represent a skip set, okay? Just an example in a Jamesway. Let's say that we had this set at 99.0, okay? Everything's great. If you look down at the bottom, we have eggs present, and look, we have eggs 14 days or more. So we don't need to worry about it. Even after putting the skip set in, we don't need to worry about anything because we have embryos more than 14 days old. So as we set the next set, that empty right moves down, and it moves down the next set, and it moves down the next set. But if you'll look, we still have eggs 14 days or older, okay? We have embryos in there, okay? But now's when we have to start paying attention, okay? Because we're going to transfer, or excuse me, there was one more step. So now that it arrives in the 5th position, we still have eggs in there over 14 days old. But when we transfer, now we have an empty spot and an empty rack, okay? And now our embryos are 14 days or less, and we have to increase the temperature during this time. Now, as we keep setting again, okay, now they moved into the 5th position. Now we have eggs over 14 days, and now we can resume our normal temp, okay? Every incubator is the same. So remember, when we skip the set, when they get up to when they would reach 15 days, you need to start paying attention, because at transfer time, you will no longer have anything but the oldest embryo in your machine 14 days old. Be prepared to increase the temp to offset this. Egg turning. We have to stay on top of this. You know, if we have a lot egg turning, improper egg turning can cause malpositions, okay, embryo mortality. It hurts your chick quality. There's nothing good about it. Eggs need to be turned properly, the proper degree, and once an hour. This is typically what I know. There's been a lot of work done on turning more often and all this kind of stuff. But regardless of how often you turn, make sure it's turned properly. And not only do they need to turn the proper angle, they need to be turned smoothly, very smoothly, not rough. Okay, turn smoothly. And we just have to do this till they're biologically, from a physiology standpoint, till they're 15 days old. Okay, all we have to do. But some incubators, fixed rack, multi-stage, you can't level them, so it doesn't hurt to leave them, but it helps sometimes by leveling. Okay, it helps different, and everybody's different. Everybody has a different opinion, but it gives us flexibility. But make sure our turning, especially at the onset of incubation with an embryo, these things need to be turned and turned properly to keep the embryonic stage of development proper. Set and transfer. We need to know our incubation time. And that means from the time that egg starts incubation until it's ready to pool. Okay. Is it 504 hours? If it is, then we should be able to pool at 504 hours. Okay. We should be able to pull the chicks. If not, we have something wrong. They may be ready at 504, but we don't pull them until 512 or 515. You're keeping your birds from feed and water when you do this. We need to know our time. We need to be consistent in our programs. We need to set and transfer consistently. But sometimes on the set, due to maybe flock age being young, due to after a skip set, there are some exceptions that we have to change the set time, but it should always be an exception. Always be an exception, not the rule. Now, do we keep flocks consistent with a mix, or do we segregate? And I tell people, whatever you want to do is fine. But whatever you do, learn how to manage the incubation off of that, okay? And reason I'm saying that, there are some operations that have a couple of hatcheries, okay? And they'll have one hatchery that when the flocks become into production, they go into this hatchery until they're about 38 weeks old, and then they move to the other hatchery. So one hatchery always has some prime and young, and the other hatchery has some prime and old. Okay. So yeah, if you are going to do it, but we need to make sure we look at our incubation, look at our embryonic stage development. And if we need to make a change, we need to be willing to do so. Okay. Now, okay. Chick assessment. We need some form. This is what I use, but we need some form to tell us what our chick quality is. What does it look like? Okay. What are we sending our customer? Embryo diagnosis. We need to make sure we know what's going on in our incubation. Okay. Mortalities. A vet I used to work with gave me this, and I find this to be very true, and it helps troubleshooting tremendously. But a normal mortality is going to start out, whatever it is, the first day, and it's going to come down. And then it'll spike at the end for culling, something like that. But if you have a bacterial infection, your first day is going to be high, your second day is going to be high, even higher, your third day is going to be high, and they're all going to be high until they finally all die off that were infected, or we medicate, one or the other, okay? But you need to recognize the patterns to know what's going on. If we are overheating and dehydrating baby chicks, you'll see a pattern like your second day won't go down. It stays about the same as the first, but your third and fourth day will be astronomically high because we overheated and dehydrated. And all of the birds that we lost to mortality won't have any feed in them or any water. They will have sat right there where we took them to the farm, unloaded them. They're going to stay and not move. And that's what it's going to end up. And they're starve outs or non-starter birds, they're called. Okay. So recognize this so we understand what our opportunity is and where we can go take care of it. Okay. Now, hatchery in the future. All right. I've talked to a lot of people, and I really stress the point to look at economics. Look at what kind of feed conversion can we gain? What kind of uniformity can we gain? Okay. Now, let me give you an example. Nothing to do with incubation, just simply logistics and timing. If chicks are ready to hatch and we pull that chick, we need to process it and get it to the farm as soon as possible. You can't get it there too soon. They need to be on feed and water as soon as possible to start the growth. Okay. Now, I'm going to give an example here. We have a, if it's possible that we hold chicks for 24 hours before they hit feed and water because of our timing and our incubation, because of how we hold, couldn't get them to the farm, whatever the reason. And you might be in 5 days growth, the first 5 days growth, you might be affecting that bird 40, 45 grams of weight difference from proper to not. Uniformity will be everywhere. And you don't have time to catch up before it goes to the processing plant. Okay. Another thing that we need to look at, that this also help our companies figure out, do we need to look at maybe building a new hatchery, renovating our hatchery we have, consolidating hatcheries, what equipment do we use, what can we gain? By using this education for broiler performance, okay? And I just gave you an example of what happens if we don't have enough transport, what happens if we have our incubation wrong, we don't have the labor to pull the chicks, whatever the reason, okay? We could be affecting so much. Okay, broiler performance is all about hitting your target weights. And the first one is the 7-day weight, okay? Extremely important. Most hatcheries don't look at this, but I suggest I would look at it. You know, a baby chick should grow 100% in size from day one, 100%, okay, increase, all right, in just 3 days. In 3 days' time, all right? So, I mean, that's a lot. That is a lot, but that's what it should be. In 7 days, the first 7 days, we should have maybe 4.4 up to 5% of the day-old chick weight. Okay, and just an example of what I'm trying to say: a 40-gram chick on day one. Okay, if it was 4 times the weight, it would be 160 grams. That's 7 days. But if it reaches 5 times the weight, if we do everything right and the genetic potential is there, it could be 200 grams. Now you see the difference. There could be 40 grams difference. Now you think, well, okay, and it goes according to size, of course. But if you look at 4.5 times, okay, so now you're looking at 180 grams, all right? So, and that's a good target. If you're not hitting it, there's something causing the problem. But when baby chicks get put onto the farm, we want a meeting. We want those crops full in that first 24 hours. That's what we want, okay? And if they don't, we're losing broiler performance. Well, if they don't, what's the reason they don't? And we've got to figure that out, okay? Now, here's the biggie. Uniformity is huge when the birds go to a plant, okay? It's so huge. Feed conversion is obviously important. But when you, 1 gram on a 7-day wait could equal to 6 grams when it gets to the plant at 35 days. That's at 35 days. So if we're off that much, we may miss our target weight coming into the plant. 7-day waits are extremely important. And if we're not hitting them, we need to know what. Don't expect to get 5 times the weight if we don't have the equipment to make that happen. People hear all the time that they're getting it. Well, how come we're not getting it? It's because you don't have a new hatchery. You don't have single stage. You don't have everything. It takes you 24 hours to get the chicks to the farm. Logistics, logistics, logistics. When you put all this together, believe me, it helps learn how to get new equipment. So I've talked to a lot of people. That's okay. What would you do if we were going to build a new hatchery? What would we do? Okay. When you look at logistics, you have to look at this. I've given up on husbandry. Our process is so fast now with automation, we don't have time to look at every chick. I'm a realist, and I do know that. So it's important that we do everything right during the incubation. So let's look ahead a few years, okay? And I just chose 2025. And this is based off, not my opinion, this is based off what I've heard and what I think is going to happen. We're still going to have mixed breeds in different markets. Markets change, and they can change overnight, and then you have to gear up for that market or vice versa. We know that. There's always going to be mixed breeds. We're going to have the high yield. We're going to have the feed converters out there in the classic. That's always going to be that. What we're learning about our breeders, about our male management, there's no reason not to average 86% hatch or higher on a daily basis. And it can happen. And I see it happen. It's right now happening on everybody that has the proper equipment. Okay. 7-day mortality, less than 1%. Less than 1%. Okay. Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. All transfer 18 days, 18 hours to 19 days, maybe 19.4. A window of opportunity, especially in ovo. If you're using in ovo, okay, it is important. If you try to transfer too early, you will lose hatch. You can transfer early if you want, but you're going to lose hatch and you're going to lose chick quality. Okay, it's been going on since 1990. You will lose hatch. Okay, remember a few slides ago, why is Monday and Tuesday and Thursday and Friday's hatch always different? Because we have a 19-day versus an 18-day. Do the math. It's not hard to figure that out. Be consistent on transfer. And that's what we're shooting for. And we will hit this target. There's more and more automation coming out, technology coming out. So let's look at the future here again. We're going to have fewer but larger hatcheries. Okay. Going to be user friendly as the picture, the slide that I showed you earlier. Okay. We're going to be able to do it with a minimum amount of labor, and we're going to have to. But that minimum amount of labor is probably going to be maintenance. We are going to be in a consistent preventive maintenance in order for the hatchery to run smoothly and to keep going, because it's going to happen. We already have it now, but because of labor, because of economics and efficiency, instead of 4 hatcheries doing 1 million, we're going to probably have 1 hatchery that will do 4 million, so that we have one set of automation. Okay. We fewer employees, and it makes sense. But the employees we have to basically be technicians, because it is a fast process. Maybe 900,000 chicks per day, and do it less than 4 hours. I'm talking about they come through into the chick room. They are processed, vaccinated, processed, counted on the way to the farm in 4 hours. All chicks on the farm by 9 a.m. in the morning. This is a goal of a lot of broiler departments, and it's a very, and everything here is attainable, okay? Everything's attainable. What do we need to put more emphasis on? Chick, hold, and temperature. Know your incubation time. Pull your chick, get it to the farm. Don't hold chicks unnecessarily. Know your time. Okay, delivery and timing. It doesn't make sense to process 200,000 chicks per hour and let them sit in the hatchery. We have to have the transport to get them to the farms. When we finish them, we should load and go. And that's what we need to be striving towards. That is the future, okay? Programs, embryo diagnosis, chick quality, egg grading, preventive maintenance, logging how much money we spend on an incubator, how much time do we spend on an incubator versus when is it going to offset and that we need new equipment. We're not going to get new equipment unless we document all of this, okay? Again, if we're losing 30 to 40 grams of uniformity between chicks at 5 days, and we can't hit our 7-day targets, what is it going to take to get those, okay? Because we should be able to hit them. The genetics are there. Managing off of our data. Technology changes constantly, and typically it's for the best. I'm working with a lot of people, and I'm working with people that they talk about technology all the time. And where I come in and play, I specifically tell them, keep the hatchery manager, keep the logistics, and keep our broiler performance in mind when you're doing this. What will help us achieve this? Okay. Now, update equipment. Again, I am a proponent of single stage. I know we have multi-stage out there, and I'm not saying it can't be ran proper because it can't. But when we start putting money in something, it takes time to do all this too. We need to sometimes stop and try to figure out, do we need to change what we're doing, and do we need to update our equipment? And the answer is yes. I see it all the time. Not just incubation. We need to update our ventilation, and we need to update automation. You have a separator that's 30 years old. It's probably not going to be working like it did when it was 30 years ago, okay? I've seen chicks coming off the end. We're losing hatch like crazy because the machine's not working properly, okay? There's all kinds of things like this can happen. Preventive maintenance, as I said earlier, will be the key to your success. We need personnel that can handle and understand all equipment, okay? No antibiotics ever. Antibiotics are going away and probably will go away completely everywhere. There's still hatcheries that use them, but most hatcheries are trying to get away from it, okay? We better make sure we have the equipment in place that we can produce a good quality chick and keep it stress-free until it hits the farm and we get it on feed and water. In ovo feeding. I hear people talk about it all the time, and I've talked to a lot of people that do the research on this, okay? I think it's going to happen. Remember, genetic potential. You're not going to get better than the genetic potential. If you did, you probably had your data is incorrect. But in ovo feeding, I've seen the study on it, and I've seen where it worked and didn't work, okay? But there's a possibility, and I hear a lot of talk about this, and I think it's going to happen in the future. And I think it's going to happen in the near future. Minimal stress on chicks. Whatever we need to do to minimize that stress on that baby chick, because we're not going to have antibiotics to help us. We need that bird strong when it hits the farm, okay? No formaldehyde. Everybody is trying to come off of formaldehyde. That's fine, but let's figure out what are we going to do when we come off of formaldehyde, okay? It's not just a matter of stop using it. We've got to figure out how to manage it. It's like being antibiotic free. How you become antibiotic free, you stop using antibiotics. But that doesn't mean you have the program proper in order to manage the chicks to keep the stress off of them. Okay. Takes work to do. Same way with no formaldehyde. We got to be able to replace it with something that works and that does not harm our baby chicks. Here's something that I see very successful in the places that do it. They have a meeting. I'm talking one meeting at the end of every week. They take the key personnel, whether it be like their transfer supervisor, chick processing supervisor, egg receiving, maintenance supervisor, and they all get together at the end of the week for about a 30-minute meeting, and they update on everything that's going on. Inside a hallway, inside the break area, they provide the information on hatch percent, hatch and fertile percent, 7A mortality, and they look at things and they know exactly what's happening and they keep in touch. Because as these hatcheries get larger, we lose touch with everybody. Everybody's out doing their own thing. We don't know what's going on. Bring it all back together, a simple 30 minutes at the end of the week with your key personnel, put it back in check. I've seen it happen at companies and it's absolutely fabulous. Last thing, proper training. Don't expect to get a lot of automation and hire somebody to say, make sure you keep that stuff running. They need to be trained on this equipment, okay? We need to make sure that everybody understands incubation. Don't expect somebody to understand profiles. If something happens, how do they troubleshoot whenever they've had no training? Make sure they get the training. Again, it's going to be key. Now, last thing to remember, again, genetics will change. We're always going to be chasing genetic potential. Always. If we don't update our equipment, we don't update our facilities, if we don't improve our logistics, and if we don't improve everything that I just mentioned, and we don't improve our labor situation, we're going to miss our genetic potential. Okay? It's up to us to achieve it. We need to make sure we have the tools to do so. With that, I thank everybody very much.
Thank you, Scott, very much. Very good presentation. I always like to hear you talk and expound your wealth of knowledge and information. I'm sure everybody get something out of this now or watching it in the future. So few questions. Some of them are a little bit more detailed. A couple more kind of enough detailed. We might address those at a later point. But so in your opinion, with all the changes in everything from 1977 till now, and more husbandry then and technology, what is your overall opinion of chick quality now as compared to then?
I think we have capability to have better chick quality now. We have, especially those who have upgraded. Okay, we have the technology to do it, and we can produce better chick quality. However, chick quality is very subjective. There are certain flocks, just an example, on a young and a prime flock, it's easier to get good chick quality out of those. But on an older flock, because again, different reasons, we have more contamination, this and that, we can still produce good chick quality again, but it's not going to just happen on its own. But I honestly believe I think our chick quality today is better than it was years ago. And number one, we measure more now. We have more data to support whether it is better or not. But the problem with the chick quality that I see now, most definitely, is the consistency in it. It's the keeping that chick quality good.
Okay. So, I mean, part of it, I think, is a single stage. We can provide the embryos exactly what they need at that stage of development. Multi-stage, predominantly, that's what we had then, and we incubated for the average. But we have more opportunities now for sure.
Well, and we do have more opportunity. And I want to specify, and those listening have probably heard me say this several times. a good multi-stage, I'm talking a good, ran perfectly, okay? I see it all the time. People run the things great. They still will not outperform a single stage, okay? They won't do it. However, I think our single stage, I don't think we're getting all out of our single stage that we can get out of it. I think we still need to be looking at this, and we need to be trying to fine tune and taking a better look at the eggs that are going inside these single stage cabinets. I think we can even get better with that as well.
Right.
But the single stage allows us to do this. Now, I am not, I don't work for Jamesway Chickmaster. I want everybody to know this. Keith just asked me to give a talk and had no idea what I was going to say
Uh-oh, here it comes.
until you heard. But I've said this so much. This isn't a secret. I honestly believe we have peaked what we're going to get out of our multi-stage. I think we've peaked. Believe me, those of you that have worked with me know we have tried so many different things to try to get a little more. And honestly, we have peaked and we've plateaued. And it's time to take another step, because look from 1987 to 2019, our feed conversion is going to change. Our rate of gains are going to change. We've got to be able to handle that embryo to give our customer the chance to reach the potential.
Right.
And I think our number one thing to do is we've got to update our equipment.
Yeah, it gives us more opportunities to manage things for sure. So if somebody's building a new hatchery, and you kind of looked at the T-shaped hatchery, then the newer version, but in light of what's happened recently with the pandemics and health and things, I mean, what are some recommendations you might have for hatcheries, existing hatcheries or new hatcheries, that might help them go deal with one of these situations?
Okay. We should always be thinking about user friendly. Okay. We've got to get it out of our minds that, oh, that'll be good enough. That ought to be good enough. It's just a broiler hatchery. We got to get that out of our mind. Okay. Look, when 2 points of feed conversion can affect a 1 million bird operation, about $1 million a year, a 1 million bird per day, a 4 million operation, we're talking about 4 million per year. And we can buy a lot of equipment for that. So when we look at things like that, and we say, wait a minute, we need to take a look at this. Well, we just don't need to say, okay, let's build a new hatchery. Okay. With everything going on, we need to exercise biosecurity to the fullest. Okay. I'm talking about hygiene inside the hatchery. In the one slide that I showed, remember I showed the personnel corridor. Keith, can I share my screen again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let me go back to this, please.
I've seen too, you're talking about that personnel corridor and keeping biosecurity people on different sides of the hatchery they should be. I've seen hatcheries that have different colored shirts for those that are working in the egg setting side and those working in the hatch side, so they don't just keep crossing.
Keith, am I sharing my screen?
Yeah, yeah, you are.
Okay.
Just go slide back to that slide. I know which one you're looking at or looking for.
Let me try to get back to it if I can.
I think it's slide 17.
Okay. Well, as usual, see, their technology. I need to improve my technology on this thing, and that's what I need to do.
Yeah, it's before that.
I'm getting there, but anyway, while I'm clicking to get to this, okay, Keith, the last thing you just mentioned. Lord have mercy. Okay, there we go.
There we go. Yep.
Oh, that's what I need. Something like that to pop up. All right. We'll get there. Don't worry. All right. Um, one thing to remember. Okay, Keith, what you just told me. Can you repeat that again, please?
I've seen some hatcheries that try to keep that flow right to where they would have people working in the chick processing part have one colored shirt, and those working in the chick receiving part a different colored shirt, so they're not constantly going from one end to the other back and forth.
Okay. And I want to expand on that. Okay. And there are some complexes that produce grandparents that they take biosecurity so serious. When you come in, you come in their clothes. They meet you at the hotel and they bring you clothes to put on. So you have to be in their clothes. You come to their operation and you change out of it, you shower, and you're in brown, and you shower, and then you're in yellow. And when you come through that shower, you're considered semi-clean. Then you walk through a path and you go into the hatchery and you get out of that apparel, out of the clothing, and you get into white. And when you're white, you're clean. But then once you get into the hatchery, you notice there are people that have white and there are people that have green. And the green is allowed. There's two parts of a hatchery from transfer back, which would be right here from your incubators back, and then the front of the hatchery from your hatchers forward. And this is where the white clothing should be. Never do they want to see the green. Okay, the green is back here. And it's just two reasons. So number one, you can identify if somebody's in the right area. Number two, it helps people be conscientious. Okay, I don't need to cross this transfer area. I don't need to be coming through this setter room, coming in and going through this hatcher room, through this separator room, into the chick processing, and then come back here. It tells you come out into the corridor, okay, and you can go all the way down and go into any room, any area without contaminating. And I think it should be taken this serious, okay? And so we think, well, what happens about maintenance? You need to split maintenance up. You work in this area, you work in this area. But I think it's a great idea, Keith, to be able to separate that out. I really do.
Yeah, and then for the other thing, I think is just add on is to answer that question too. I think because of what we've seen with the pandemic and people having to be out and personnel not being there as often as possible, I think I know some hatcheries that haven't had as much automation before, but are now looking at it more seriously, because it's like, if you don't have to have as many people there with extra automation, then that might help in situations like that. But
I agree. I heard the owner of a company specify at a meeting. He said, as we get into more automation and as we get into the new generation of everything what we're going to do, he said, we should be able to get key personnel, pay more for experienced, for certified people to come in and work on this and be able to retain these employees. And I agree with that 100%. I sure do. But the way to improve labor situation is to improve your production. Okay. Now, you can't just go from 1 million to 4 million with the same amount of people. It doesn't work that way. But you'll be surprised using automation how much that can save. Okay. And so it's economics. We go in, we say, what can we save? And you don't buy this piece of equipment and say, well, okay, it saves us a person. We're going to buy a separator so it saves us 2 people. It's not just that. Remember, we have to look back at what this is doing, it's allowing these chicks to come into the chick room to be processed into the farm. This is worth a ton of money, okay? But we have to have the whole process in order to do that.
Yep. Just a couple, we have time for a couple more questions here, I think, but kind of combining two questions. I mean, you've come through working through a genetics company and work closely with geneticists and knowing what they're doing. One, do you see a need in hatcheries for maybe different profiles with different genetics? I mean, I'm not talking just broilers, but necessarily because, you know, we have customers that have layers, you know, and then meat birds. But then also the follow-up question to answer along with that is that, and I know my answer to this, but what are your thoughts? Do you think that there'll ever come a time where we shorten that incubation period through genetic selection?
I think we will definitely shorten it, but I think it's dangerous. I think that
Yep.
we better have, number one, we better have single states, because it doesn't matter how shortened it gets, we can keep things in check the best that we can, okay? But if we don't have the equipment to do it, you're already behind and you'll never catch it, all right? So this can happen for sure. But there are different breeds out there, and each different breed, there's certain breeds that, let's just say this. Some breeds metabolize a lot hotter than another, which means they're gonna hatch off sooner, okay? So just an example, you may have a 504 bird, set hatch at 504, and you may have a 510.
It's 504 hours and 510 hours of incubation.
Yes, exactly, of incubation. Okay, and that's just what it's going to be. Well, so you think, but wait a minute, maybe I don't want that 504. Maybe I want to take it to 10. That doesn't mean let it hatch at 504 and pull at 510.
Right.
That means think of incubation. Always apply the physiology part in the embryonic development. Always look at this in the embryonic needs. Okay, you can extend that, but it has to be by design, and you have to figure this out, how to do this, and it can be done, and it can be done successfully. And it's not just a matter of, oh yeah, just turn it down 1/10, you'll get it. It doesn't work that way, not anymore. We have to put the science behind it. Okay, so that's where I'm at on this. Okay.
Okay. One final question, so you can philosophize here, because maybe you have an exact answer. I don't know. As far as the performance of the broilers, and we see the improvements in feed conversion and all that, how much of a role does incubation play in the improved performance of performance of our broilers in general, in your opinion?
Okay. Keith, I mentioned earlier about a company had 15 different complexes, fed out the same feed mill, but 15 points difference in the top to the bottom in feed conversion. Okay. Fed out the same mill, and they had the same broiler department. It's not that one had better housing than the others. They all had equal housing, everything. What was different was the hatcheries. And it was very apparent once coming into the hatchery. But now you first have to start with that data. And that data suggests, okay, something is wrong. That is way too far apart. Okay, so let's look at it, see where we're at. Well, it was obvious to see what was going on. And this is the term I like to use. I call it cooking the birds, forcing the hatch. Don't force your hatch. You know, we try to get every chick out that we can, and we certainly need to do this, but do it the correct way. Don't set the eggs 12 hours earlier to make that happen, because you have a hatch window, or your hatch spread is 45 hours. Figure out why it's 45 hours.
Right.
And
Right.
get it back in check, and it can be done. Okay. We use a lot of Band-Aids, and that's fine. Sometimes we have to do it immediately, but make that a Band-Aid and get rid of it as quick as possible. I honestly feel that, I honestly feel that we have affected in a hatchery at least 9 points of feed conversion. And let me tell you why I say that. Because I worked with the hatchery. We went in, we could start anywhere we want. Everything needed improved. Okay. This is actual. Now, we worked and worked and worked. And the hatchery manager was eager, ready to do this and that, and did it. Nothing changed but in the incubation. Now, we could have pulled these chicks 24 hours earlier than they were pulling, okay? I don't mean they were waiting that long. They literally hatched 24 hours early. They were at 480 hours, they were ready to pull, okay? We know that's wrong. We know it is, but when everything got put back, they didn't buy anything. They did not purchase anything. All they did is get working what they needed working. Okay. Now they bought a lot of equipment to update because it was broke down, and there hadn't been any money spent on the hatchery in a while. When they completed, and which was only about 6 months later, they were 9 points better in feed conversion, and nothing changed but in that hatchery. And that has been, in my career, the biggest eye-opener that has been. Something else I want to specify, an operation. When there's an operation that has a single-stage hatchery, they have multi-stage, but they have single-stage hatchery. Everything after 50 weeks of age goes to the single-stage hatchery. Their claim is that they gained 6 points better feed conversion from 50 weeks till they sell out of the single stage versus the best they can get out of the multi. So yeah, it can affect it tremendously.
Most definitely.
And this is actual data coming from customers. Right. This isn't research. This is the actual.
And managing the heat load and the developmental patterns and stuff. I always look at, that embryo, if things affect embryo mortality that affect hatch, some of those that didn't die, embryo death, were also affected by whatever it was.
Absolutely.
And they're going out in the field now, and we're going to ask those to perform the same. Yeah.
That's right, Keith. And we forget that. We forget that they were affected too. What it is, they're just a more viable chick, stronger chick.
But they were still stressed.
But they're stressed, and whatever performance they received at the end, it could have been much better.
Right.
I can't emphasize that 7-day wait enough, is trying to achieve that target. And I didn't say this, but there have been operations that should be about 190, grams, 190 grams at 7 days. And they're 135, 140. Okay. So when you see that, something is wrong.
Okay? And that's going to carry on to the process time.
Yes,
too.
It's going to carry on to about 2 to 6. Remember that. And again, this is actual data. This is what I think. I'm reciting actual data here. And so when you have something that abrupt, we have some major challenges and major issues. All hatcheries, I don't care if we build one today or if it's 40 years old, we should always be fine-tuning our hatcheries, always. And you do that by preventive maintenance.
Right.
What we don't want is to be so far behind, we're trying to just catch up. And most of the time, we never get caught up because this happens. And so much is going on because it's been let go so long. And it's most of it's because of the money. We didn't get the money. The budget got cut. We didn't get to put the money in the hatchery this year, something like this. So I'm not saying there's not reasons, but there's a lot of times that we can get a lot more from what we got. And those of you listening, when I have visited your facilities, you all know when I come into the operation, I come in and I try to help you get the most you can out of what you have. I don't come in and say, you need to get this, buy this, and call me when you get it, and then I'll come back. Well, I don't do that. You know that. We try to get what we can. It's called short-term hatch gain, short-term chip quality gain, okay? Then you have to have a long-term plan. You have to say, okay, let's make sure we're operating the best capacity, the best efficiency that we can. Let's make sure we're getting this. However, what is our target in the field? How are we going to compete? How are we going to do this? How are we going to reduce our feed? Where's the money out there? How are we going to save our company? And to do that, you have to have this upfront expenditures to do this, to be able to just operate things properly.
Yep, for certain. Well, I can't thank you enough, Scott, for spending time with us today in preparation of this presentation and letting me and some of the viewers extract from your brain of knowledge and wisdom from all these years.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Keith.
But I always enjoyed chatting with you and visiting with you. And we don't live near each other anymore. We don't get to do that enough. So we just get to do it on webinars and Zoom conferences, right?
Exactly.
But thank you again very much. Those that ask questions that we didn't quite get to, we'll be able to entertain most of those by email directly to you. Some of them a little bit more complex and complicated, probably takes a little bit more detail to answer them. So we'll get to those at a later time and email you back. So just bear with us on that. But again, thank you, Scott, for your time with us today. And with that, we will sign off. I'm Keith Bramwell of Jamesway Chickmaster Incubator Company and Scott Martin
My
as
pleasure.
a guest today. Thank you very much.
Everybody
Have a good rest
stay
of your
well.
day.